We're talking life, money and confident finance with Amanda Redman of Amanda Redman Financial Planning. And Amanda, the M word we're talking about today, money, and how difficult people find talking about it, even with their closest life partner. It's really important that people do actually talk about their finances.
It is. When you're living with somebody over the long term, it's really important that you have an open dialogue with them about not only the here and now from a money perspective, but also the longer term. It's still the case that women more typically outlive men by a few years. And as we know, our life expectancies have all increased. But it is important to have those conversations to make sure you're on the same page, but also to make sure that there is provision in place for one of you if the other one does die younger.
And it's amazing how few people do actually talk about this kind of stuff with their partner.
Yes, it can seem surprising, but Lloyds Bank actually did some really good research recently, which showed that 50% of people still feel that it is a taboo subject to discuss with their partner. And interestingly, 2/3 of people have talked about how they would spend their lottery winnings if they ever won, but only 1/3 of people have had a conversation about their will and what would happen longer term. And another piece of research that I really enjoyed reading was from the Money Advice Service, and that said that 13% of people actually have a stash of money that they've never told their partner about. So it just shows that there is a lot more open conversation that is perhaps needed.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you spend your professional life working with people to create financial strategies to support their personal goals. So do the findings of those studies kind of reflect in your personal experience when you're talking to people?
Yes, to some degree. The fact that I'm sitting down with a couple means that they are wanting to make a difference to their financial future, which is great. But often they haven't thought through all of the implications, and that's fine. It's not required in advance of the meeting. And the way that I work with couples is to ask lots of questions, which hopefully will bring that discussion to the surface, and they can have that discussion in front of me as a more neutral third party. And obviously they can then carry on having those conversations after I've gone.
But you'll draw things out of a couple that they didn't know that the other one didn't know.
Yes, yeah, and so sometimes we unearth a topic that really hasn't been discussed in detail, which should be. So sometimes I meet with couples where if the man is thinking about his retirement, if he's enjoying his job, he might be saying, yes, I'll carry on working until I'm 65. I see no reason, as long as my health is good, I'll carry on till 65. And I had one couple where the wife just turned round to look at him and said, what do you mean you'll work till 65? I thought you'd retire at 60 and we could go travelling. So they'd obviously never discussed it between them. And so my role can help facilitate those conversations so that they don't come as a surprise later down the track.
And obviously a lot of this stuff is intensely personal and intensely private and sometimes quite difficult for people to talk about. So how do you go about doing that when you actually sit down with someone?
Yes, yeah. Well, it's sometimes easier for younger couples to be more open about their finances, but that's not necessarily always true. So I would always encourage people to start talking about them themselves in a general way. Often one person within the couple has something on their mind that they might want to bring up. And I would say just start the conversation very generally, even using the old trick of, I have a friend who. So you could say, oh, I was chatting to Susie the other day and she was saying that she wants to really buy a holiday home in future, but her husband, Mike, she's not sure how he will respond to that. Or use it as a way of introducing a topic that you are wanting to talk to your partner about in just a very subtle way to start with.
And you've got to be quite understanding with people, haven't you?
Yes, yeah, and some people are not ready to talk about finances or feel a bit concerned about planning too far ahead in the future. So it's a question of starting the conversation gently, if that's appropriate.
And in terms of the length of time into the future that people should be thinking, are we talking about, just thinking over the next 5 or 10 years or all the way into the distance?
Ideally all the way through to the distance, but obviously it's harder to plan longer term because there are so many more unknowns. But generally, when I work with couples, we will look at short, medium and long term scenarios. And the more time you have between now and any big future decisions or big life changes, the more time you have to make sure that everything is lined up in the way that you want it to be, or the more time you have to change things if they're not going to be quite right for you in the future.
So really, we're not talking about one conversation to sort it all out. This has got to be an ongoing series of conversations.
Yes, definitely. And obviously, as we know, people's lives evolve, things happen, circumstances change. So it's important to have regular conversations. And certainly I will always meet with my clients at least once a year to make sure that I stay up to speed with what their circumstances and priorities are.
Okay, Amanda, thank you very much. And if you'd like to have a chat with Amanda about your personal financial situation, and she'd be delighted to have a conversation with you with an initial, no obligation first conversation. And of course, you can always look at the website.